they're going to wait till after the Olympics and build a new hotel. And I think with you and I are still around, Mike, we might need a bigger ballroom. Yeah, because look at this wonderful audience. You're always the
well, Jamie,
main attraction.
You will be around, Jamie. I'm
well,
just following you.
I don't know. You know, someone asked Warren the other day, says, how long do you expect to live, and will you invest your $300 billion in that time frame? He says, I expect to live 3 years, and yes. He was predicting a big correction, so it's kind of interesting. But let's talk about happier things. Mike, you've had a huge impact on the financial world, education, healthcare. But one thing that ties it all together is your commitment to the American dream and making that available to the largest cohort of people possible. And I just want to welcome you back and cover that subject today. So it's great to have you here.
Jamie, always great to be with you.
Well.
And I want to thank Marge, which has allowed me to give more contributions away. So thank you.
Yeah. Mike knows how to push certain buttons with me, and one of them is the more money you make me, the more I give away. And we've always tried to be as philanthropic as possible. So it's a great alignment of interests with you and some of our other major investors. It's been a great run. Last year we discussed the importance of immigration to the innovation economy. You noted that 82% of companies, AI and unicorns, were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants, that human capital was the essential role, that perhaps the value of human capital is $1,500 trillion, that just dwarfs our debt. Our education system is a bit of a drag on the prosperity, but we make up for it with immigration. And there was a lot of concern about excessive tax and regulation last year, but 1 year later with the new administration, things look a little different. So let's revisit it. Well, what's your take on the American dream now, and how's it evolved, and what's the current state with the Trump administration?
So when we thought of building this, started about 14 years ago. Our first idea was we'd build it in Malibu, overlooking Pepperdine. We're a better place to have a center for the American dream, looking out at the Pacific. In 1540, Cabrillo claimed California. If you've ever been in the, quote, Malibu Lagoon, that's where he landed.
Really?
Almost 600 years ago. So, but they suggested maybe we could have 200 people visit, so you couldn't even put your conference on there.
Wow.
So we went to Washington. We've been doing surveys, and if you want, there's numerous people doing surveys. Every quarter they came out. Archbridge Group. Last one, September 30th, 2024. 2/3 of all Americans believe they have achieved their American dream or they're on their way. 2/3. By race, by education, by income level, and every single one. This chart here shows you things, how do you feel about the American dream? Is it out of reach, etc.? But you can see the majority of people believe that they're on their way or they have achieved their American dream. The number one factor for 12 consecutive years, 4 quarters, 48 consecutive quarters, is freedom. Freedom to live your life. And so when you throw those numbers around of human and social capital, it brings me back to a formula I've subjected you and Jamie to, my children to, from 65, and many of the people in the audience here, and that is prosperity, this concept of prosperity. And I wrote this in 1965 after the Watts riots. Needed financial technology, and the multiplier effect was access to capital, then the major asset, human and social capital, and then those real assets that you find on the balance sheet. And so when you think of America, and you think of all that's gone on since the election in November and the volatility today and financial markets or yesterday, the main asset is this human and social capital. If you're extremely talented entrepreneur in Nigeria or wherever you might be in the world, right now your first choice is you come to the United States. You feel you'll have a chance, best chance at fulfilling your dreams. And that's why when I think about these things, anything that supports human and social capital serves kind of like gravity to bring the best and brightest here if they can get in. And so you saw an announcement recently by the administration talking about a $5 million gold green card. Last year, you and I, Jamie, began talking about the idea that we might be able to raise $10 to $30 trillion in the United States by letting people from around the world come here and give us 5 or 10 million and stay. Well, not necessarily become a citizen, but stay. Now, what is one of the factors that has not been introduced in this proposal, and that is not to tax you on your foreign earnings. So I've been running surveys, et cetera, of how many people would come here. There's tens of millions of millionaires in the world, and if they could come here, stay, spend money, spend their life, use health care, whatever it might be, many of them would come if you didn't tax them on their foreign earnings. So the protection of human and social capital in America allows this to occur. Last year, China lost about 1 million citizens leaving China. If they could take their money, my guess is you might have 10 million leave. And last year, you began to record where more people die than are born in China, about 1 million last year. But as the decades roll, you'll have 10 million more people in China die in a year than are born. So there's another measure now that I notice is on the web. You don't have to wait for Milken Institute data, but where are millionaires moving today? The United States is no longer the #1 location for millionaires to move. And #1 location in the world for them to move is the UAE. So in 24, you can see 6,700 millionaires moved to the UAE. The US is second and Singapore is third. But almost as many moved to Singapore, and Singapore plus the US, you add them together and they're not too far away. You also noticed a number of millionaires are now moving to Italy. And so Italy and Greece are providing you incentives. You can generally make a deal in Greece and Italy today that you agree to pay X number of dollars in tax.
Yeah.
You don't even file a tax return. So you can see how taxes and other things are moving people. Now, where are they coming from? Even though it's almost impossible to get your money out, #1 place they're coming from is China. And the #2 is the UK. Why the UK? Well, the UK changed their tax policies on non-residents. And the other one that's fairly large is India. So the enormous growth of wealth in India for a part of the population, it's a very short ride to Dubai. And so this doesn't tell you necessarily where the entrepreneurs are moving, but when they move, they can move their wealth. And so we don't really record, when we talk about the balance of payments, we don't really record. Just like we don't tell you the most important thing on the balance sheets of those companies that March finances, you would never finance a company if you didn't believe in the management.
Exactly.
And so, but we don't record if 1 million people come to the United States. We might have had a transfer of 5 to 10 trillion in human and social capital that's moved here. We focus on the balance of payments, not the real assets. And most people, when they invest, are focused on the real assets, not the real key assets of a company, as who are the people running that company. So I think, Jamie, that the question is, all the activities in the U.S., are they decreasing or increasing the social and human capital?
Yeah, that's the question.
And you touched on one, education.
Yeah.
So you're very focused, obviously, in AI, and Those of us that have invested with March are looking for all your success in investing in AI and deploying it. But 77% of everyone in a PhD in AI in America was not born here. So the U.S. is exceedingly dependent on immigration.
Yeah.
There is not one graduate science degree in America today, not one, where the majority of the students were born in the United States. And so as you think about how dependent we are on education, you could see by the time you get down to chemical engineering, it's 64%. But if I get to petroleum engineering, 82% of everyone was not born in the United States. So this is the challenge we have in education, and we'll see what happens here in the next couple years to our educational system. I'm going to give the 3008, I think, National Education Award of our Family Foundation in D.C. tomorrow.
Oh, congrats.
And the next day. And
These are for high schools,
this
primary
is the
schools?
National Educator Award for K-12, and
Okay.
we're going to surprise the teacher. 2 years ago, I gave an award at a basic school. It's a charter school in Washington, D.C. The chairman of the board of the basic company is Craig Barrett, former CEO of Intel, who you know. I know, Jamie. What about this school? You get in the school by lottery, 20% Asian, 20% African American, 20% white, 20% Hispanic, totally diverse. 100% in the kids in this school, located 5 blocks from our Center for Advancing the American Dream, go to a 4-year college, not a 2-year college, 4-year. The average kid got $190,000 in scholarships, and the average kid by 11th grade has taken 11 AP exams.
Wow.
4 blocks away is a public school, similar demographics. 15% of the kids go to 4-year colleges. Same demographics, everything the same, 4 or 5 blocks. So we have a knowledge of what we could do, and we'll see how this changes. But obviously, education and healthcare are 2 of the underpinnings of our social and human capital.
Mike, you're going back to D.C., and I'm sure you'll go by and see your new center. Let's talk a little bit about that. It's opening on July 4th, which is your birthday as well, and also the national birthday. Yeah, what was the inspiration? And when we visit there together collectively next year, all of us, what should we look forward to seeing?
Are you telling me you're going to move the Monty conference to Washington next year?
We're going to do a version of it. I think 2026 might be the 250th anniversary of our country, if I'm not wrong. Many of us remember the 200th anniversary. I was in D.C. for that, and I think that'd be a great time to go. General Allen here, and I'm sure General Petraeus will join us as well. We thought we'd have a session here and then spend a day where General Allen's going to give us a leadership lesson on the Civil War battle sites outside of Washington. But let's go back to your center. This is amazing. You know, I think we all ought to appreciate the motivation and the scale and the impact here, Mike. So.
Well, there's 4 pillars. One is financial literacy, free enterprise system, access to capital. One is health and medical research. One is the entrepreneur and innovation. And the last one is education and the educator. And our 4-year project turned into 12 years. Our $200 million budget turned into $1 billion to $1.1 billion.
Wow.
But on July 4th, we're going to open, and we hope it's a symbol of hope. I would say, Jamie, the best example I could give you is in December 7th, 1941, Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. And there is a ley light in the old Riggs Bank building there on Pennsylvania Avenue, directly across from the Treasury. And 53 years ago, you had to cover up the ley light. you could not have light in Washington, D.C. because of fear of bombing. Germany actually declared war on the U.S. before the U.S. declared war. And so for 53 years, this ley light's been covered, taken out, stored, and on July 4th of this year, we're going to uncover the ley light for the first time in 53 years. And so our idea is that a symbol of hope, of light to the world, will shine again. That was covered up when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
And that we can serve in this 6-building complex here with those towers as a symbol of hope, not just to the U.S., to the world.
Mike, on the upper left, that's fantastic. Upper left-hand corner, I see a white house there. Yeah. You probably had a chance to talk to our president on several occasions. What advice have you given him that he's listened to, and what advice have you given to him that he hasn't listened to? Yeah.
Well, let's say the team, not one individual.
Exactly.
We suggested, why don't we do one cabinet area per month?
Okay.
So let's focus on the agricultural department, and then we'll go focus on labor, and then we'll focus on education.
Right.
They did not listen to any of our advice.
Yeah, kind of all at once, huh? Yeah.
There was a movie that won the Academy Award a few years ago, Everything, Everywhere.
All at once.
Right, so...
Yeah, that's, yeah. It was a long movie, wasn't it? Yeah.
So I think we've had substantial disruption.
Yeah.
And so that idea didn't work. I'd say one of our great risks is in the medical area.
Yeah.
And so if you work for the government and you don't have 2 years, you're considered on probation. After 2 years, you're not.
Okay.
And therefore, you can lay off everyone that hasn't been there 2 years. Now, when you get to talk about a theme of this conference and a theme of your investing AI, the people most knowledgeable about new technologies are young.
Yeah.
They're most likely to be your younger employees, and so you're losing that knowledge, and maybe they'll be hired back, maybe they won't, but if I think about Alon and his thinking, he's thinking that, gosh, when he bought Twitter, there were 8,000 employees.
Yeah.
And today there's 1,500 employees.
Right.
So he's operating the company with less than 20% of the employees. 10% of the employees were there before, and 800 and 700 are new. Next, there's more volume. There's more traffic. There's more activities on X today than there were on Twitter with 20% of the employees. And second, he's launched 4 times as many apps as they did when they had 5 times as many employees. So I think he's thinking
maybe
that we can maybe operate with substantially less employees. And so a lot of people, you come in and they have zero-based budgeting. Let's just start at 0.
Right.
And then build it back up. So we'll see how that strategy works. But I would say at the moment, the volatility of the financial markets measures the volatility of our leadership at this time.
Yeah. Ron Sugar was describing a mathematical phenomena where the highs are infinite and the lows are infinite, and there's a lot of volatility in between, and I think we've kind of reached that. Now, so that kind of addressed what we thought of Doge. Now, so why don't we go, we had the formula there for success, and I find, and I'm sure you find it as well, everything's faster now. Companies are growing more quickly, and not just volatility, it's acceleration. And I think AI only enhances the speed of change. And if you think about the impact of AI on the American dream, does it accelerate the opportunity for upward movement, or are we finding there's going to be so many white-collar
I
jobs
wanna,
erased.
Jamie,
Yeah.
I want to just draw attention to that formula today.
Yeah.
So that formula is 60 years old. We talk about AI and technology, but what we don't really appreciate is the tremendous change in financial structures, financial technology,
Yeah.
and the enormous advantage the United States has with thousands of people that are familiar with capital structure,
Yeah.
how to finance a company based on the company, et cetera. When you think about one of the dramatic changes that's occurring and the enormous decrease in the role that banks have played here in the United States. So when I went to Wall Street in 68 and 69, my goal was I didn't feel the banking system was the source of capital you could build a country on or an economy on. And you can see that little blue line, how's it moved down over time, which is the banks.
Yeah.
But they have short-term liabilities. They're really not equipped to make long-term fixed-rate loans. And so we saw two great brands that were built go out of business on the West Coast, Silicon Valley Bank and Republic Bank, not because of their investments, credit, but because they bought intermediate-term U.S. government bonds, and then interest rates went up. And if you bought the 30-year government in January, end of January in 21, you lost at one point 50% of your money in a 30-year government bond, not credit, but just interest rates. And so the understanding of these and most of the other parts of the world are heavily dominated by the banks, so they don't really have the capital. Europe is moved a little bit, but it's still nowhere where the U.S., and Asia is still heavily dominated. And the Asian crisis of '98 was caused by the problem in the banking system. So I just want to comment, the focus on AI and it's disrupting every industry. The U.S. is matching today with the great growth in private credit, pension funds with long-term liabilities, with companies that want long-term fixed-rate debt. And the banks, it's almost impossible for them to compete with short-term liabilities today. And so this advantage that many of the world's leading companies come to the United States to be financed, and even though the U.S. percent of the world's economy is in the high 20s, thanks to March and others, maybe 45% of all the world's money is being managed by U.S.-based money managers.
Yeah, it's stunning. I gave a talk in Munich in late April and showed the 10 largest companies in Germany by market cap, and I said if 3 of our companies would be in the top 10 in Germany. I think that kind of woke them up that they needed to get on with innovation. But I look at this chart, I look at that 2020, 2021, 22, and you were very clear with our guests that was a time to go long, right?
Borrow as much money as you could for as long as you could.
What's the advice
today?
today?
You had to go buy an asset so you could leverage against it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like historically low interest rates. What advice do you give CEOs and entrepreneurs today?
Well, they're trying to drive down. The Secretary of the Treasury, Bassett, has told you he's only focused on one thing, the 10-year U.S. government.
Yeah.
It's around 413 this morning. Many people finance off the 5-year floating. It's around 4 now. So we'll see what occurs. But those interest rates were kind of like a one-in-a-generation experience here.
Yeah.
And so if I was building a company today, I would assume interest rates, U.S. government, somewhere between 3 and 5. And maybe they're going to head down a little bit here, and that the administration is trying to drive them down. But I've never met one person who was wealthy over the long run who could predict interest rates.
Yeah, it's particularly,
So
I can't even get them in reverse. All right, so last 10 years, with your support, we built a fund, and we've seen some tremendous growth. You know, CrowdStrike was like $5 a share, and now it's up around $400 a share, and Microsoft and Google.
Jamie, you might not have to do anything else besides buying CrowdStrike for your fund at $5 a share.
Exactly. But has there ever been a period like that where you've seen these sort of long-term compounding growth as the last decade? Where
Well, let's just,
NVIDIA?
since you put these up here, I thought it might be interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I have a
2019,
new
yeah.
theory.
Yeah.
It's called my Sumant theory, okay?
Okay.
If a company replaces a US-born CEO with a person born in India, I buy the stock, okay?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Microsoft...
They tried that in the UK. It didn't work out so well.
Microsoft went up $2 trillion. You know, Alphabet, Google went up $1 trillion. I think IBM went up 100%. You know,
Yeah.
the head of the World Bank, former CEO of MasterCard, is now the head of the World
Yeah.
Bank, born in India. Obviously, the CEO of NVIDIA was
Yeah.
born in Taiwan.
Yeah.
He missed that location. But I think it underlines this issue here. Can we attract the best talent in the world?
Yeah.
And I don't think people, number one, the highest per capita income of any group in America today are people that were born in India. Mm-hmm. That's the highest per capita.
Wow.
Taiwan is second, the Philippines third, Sri Lanka, you can see it here. And so this is an indirect measurement of the education levels of the people. And when we look at many of the shortages today in the healthcare industry and nursing and others, we can look back that we got the COVID, we got a lot less nurses immigrating
From Philippines.
to here. Yeah. And so I think understanding this, Nigerians today in America are the 5th highest performing educational group in America today. And so Nigeria, who the UN is projecting will have a population greater than China by the end of the century.
Yeah.
All those great young entrepreneurs from Nigeria are finding a home here in the United States, and many of them. So this kind of underlines this performance. You can see here mathematical performance and where the U.S. ranks here. I know that today the 90th percentile in math in the United States, if your kid said he's in the 90th percentile, that score is the 35th percentile in South Korea. And what's very interesting today is the highest performing group in the world, are South Koreans in the United States. They outperform South Koreans in South Korea. They outperform Singaporeans in Singapore. And so I'm sure you and Jamie are using that as a measure here for CEOs that want to come in here and visit. But now, you know, the Dodgers have used that strategy recently.
Exactly. Their Dodgers have figured it out. So, Mike, Rick has join me on stage here, Rick Caruso, shortly, and we're focusing about the recovery of LA. What do you think would be the biggest hurdle? I know we spoke a little bit about the insurance area, and we had a little chance to think about it last week.
Well, I brought some slides on insurance if you want to go there.
I think we should.
I think when you talk about a great company and say a company is great, the company was great because of the people that work for that company. Those people might not longer be working for that company. And so you can imagine what might have happened if we had a different mayor over this period of time. Maybe a 117 million gallon reservoir might not have been empty when the strongest winds in history were arriving.
Yeah.
Maybe they would have figured out if the fire hydrants worked. Maybe they would have been prepared for the wind just to get everything in place. But It's very difficult, and if you remember, the insurance commissioner in California did not allow them to raise rates last June 24, and probably saved many of these insurance companies 10 to 20 billion as they pulled out of the state, and has refused to allow them to raise. So it takes longer to build a house here in California than other parts of the country to get approvals. The insurance costs are moving dramatically. And so when you look at the time required versus Phoenix or Raleigh or Austin or Centra, and if you're Lennar, Stuart Miller, and you're the CEO, and you're deciding where you're going to deploy your capital to build, you've discovered that the regulation has dramatically increased the cost of a house, and maybe Malibu is #1 in the world in that area. So it's just hard for me to believe that we're going to be able to rebuild that quickly here. I've been trying to get a permit in Malibu for 7 years. I haven't even gotten a response. So it's,
Yeah, well,
I just think the homeowners are going to become increasingly frustrated. And where are you going to get the capital to build? If someone is going to loan you money to build and you don't have it, you can't do it for cash, they're going to want you to have insurance in case something goes wrong.
yeah. It takes forever, costs more than it should, and then...
Well, or if you can get it.
Or if you can get insurance, then... If
you
can't
might
get
have to
insurance,
have
you
the
can't get a
federal
loan.
government
Right.
provide. The California insurance is obviously underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something we have to address in bipartisan...
But maybe your next talk will solve all these problems.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you, dealing with Karen Bass, so Rick doesn't have to talk about her. He'll appreciate it too. Yeah, I think it's just terrible what happened here. I have deep ties in Pacific Palisades, and Mike, we actually have some guests, here this morning, and for this and Rick's session, who are staying in a hotel who are displaced, and I reached out to all of them over the weekend and said, please come join us for these conversations. We're here to help you. Rick and others of us and I will be involved in rebuilding the Palisades, but our sympathy and thoughts, and actually, I don't tell people I'm praying for anymore. I've been wiring money to them, and it has a much better impact. But my praying is kind of weak. The wire transfers work, but we've really gone to bat, and I think we really need to help people out. And Mike, you're an inspiration to all of us. Thank you again for joining us today. And
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.